Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Standard Operating Procedure, the Cafe Tele live broadcast. We're still getting set up, so bear with us just a little bit. Let me give you a sticky message there in the chat. There you go. All right, so it's a little after the appointed hour, and today I just wanted to review the 4 key skills that you need to automate your reports. And it doesn't take long to go through that. Let me first show you what I mean when I say automation. I'm going to share my screen. And sorry for all the other junk you're going to have to look at because I'm going to share the whole screen. There we go. And I'm going to focus on this Excel. This is my preferred dashboard. Just try and ignore the stuff in the background. So can you see that okay? Yeah, all right. So normally for me, this is a typical dashboard layout. The top third here is just the numbers. You can see over here, it's the numbers for the last 12 months. You can see it's rather dated, doesn't matter. And then you have, that's the dates. And then you have going across here, you have different KPIs or key performance indicators that were important for this dashboard. It's long distance. What do we got going on there? Interesting. I just pulled this up very quickly, so that's the source of the error there, to illustrate what I mean by automation. So you can see the latest date here is August of 13, and the oldest date is September of 12. So this shows the last 12 months, what I call the trailing 12 months of these KPIs. And it shows it up here as numeric data, and then it shows it in these charts, the various KPIs, as graphical data to make it easy. And then the last bit here at the bottom is the historical metrics going back all the way to January of 06. This is almost 10 years worth of data just to show a trend. But what I want to show you quickly, what I mean by automation, is that by automation, I mean that you can follow a 2-step process. Bring in your new data. That's the first step. Bring in your new data. So I can think of 4 different ways to bring in new data. One would be just type it in manually. Type in the latest. This is a monthly report. So type in your monthly data. That's the first step. One way to get that new data, to bring in that new data. So type it in manually. Second would be to copy it from an external source and paste it into your workbook. The third way would be to import a CSV or some other file type that Excel can read. And the fourth step would be real automation, I guess. If you had like an SQL query or some type of link to an external app that would bring in that data. Whatever, those are 4 different ways to update your to bring in your latest data. That's really the update, right? And then the second step is refresh your pivot tables, and everything updates automatically. So you can see at this point, the latest date here is August of 13. Yeah. And everything is tied to that date. Boy, this is really an old workbook. I've made a lot of improvements. I didn't grab the one I wanted. Interesting. But anyway, I want to illustrate what I mean by automation. So I'm going to go here and here's some monthly data. I've just copied it badly. What have I got there? Gosh, I've done this horribly. It's a picture. I can't even copy it. Holy cow. All right. Well, we have to wing it. I didn't grab the right workbook. So I'm going to basically just steal my August of 13 data just to illustrate the point. And I also have to do the same for my subscriber data. It's already there. I've already got, sorry. Yeah, I already have my September of 13 data, right? So now That's step one. I have updated my data source. Here's the subscribers table. Here's the invoice data that drives this particular dashboard. And what I need to do now is refresh my pivot tables. And the best way to do that when you have more than one pivot table is to click inside of any pivot table. If you only have one pivot table, click inside that pivot table, right click inside that pivot table and select refresh. But because we have several pivot tables, I'm going to come up here and select refresh and select refresh all. Remember, before I added that data, the chart was current up until August of 2013. Now I'll refresh it and look at my dashboard, and now it's September of 2013. So again, it's a two-step process. My idea of automation is a two-step process. Bring in the latest data, refresh your pivot tables, and everything's done. You can see all the charts go out to September of 13 now. And all I did was update the data, refresh the pivot tables. It doesn't get any easier than that. Everything just flows automatically. Okay, since that's my idea of automation, now let's go to today's lesson. And it looks like have a couple of you joined? Oh, one of you joined. Hi, how you doing? There's just one of you out there, so this is a private tutorial. What's your name? Type something into chat, will you? So this is kind of a private tutorial just for you. I'll go back to my Excel. Actually, go back here. And I can bring my chat out here so I can actually see it while I'm typing. Okay, that was that one. Here's the workbook we're going to use today, and I said that there's 4. Hey, John Rowe, how you doing? You producing reports? Anyway, this is my 4-step automation process, and maybe while we're talking, some other folks will join us. My live broadcast is some days are better than others. Probably a testament to my erratic headline writing skills. So anyway, here's the four skills that I was going to show today. And the first is synthetic fields. So I just copied the data from last week's workbook. And I always start with what I call synthetic fields. This is a way that you can add data to the data you're importing. So in this example, this is data exported from an OSS. You might also have data that you exported directly from a device, such as like an SMSC or your RNC or some type of computer-based system inside your network. Either you've exported it or you've written a script to get it and format it in a particular way, and it gets updated here. This is OSS data. Every row is a timestamp. You can see for several different elements. So in this field, you can see I've got 19, 20, how many got? 28, 29, 30. Gosh, I've got more than I thought. Down to 92, right? So I've got 92 elements in that first timestamp. And then you can see here, this is a new element, but it's the same timestamp. So the OSS has exported 3 primary different elements, 90 instances of that for every timestamp. So if I go down to 271 here, I should be at the next timestamp. I'm already at the next timestamp. All right, so it's irregular. Yeah, right here. You can see the timestamp has changed to 1 a.m. So I have several timestamps, one for each hour throughout the day. And I think overall there's 9 or 10 days worth of data here. And I am going to, one of the things I want to do is I want to chart this by hour. So I would create a synthetic field, a column basically. And as an hour, it's use the hour function and peel the hour out of this. It's the timestamp field. And you can see you've got the hour function. You've got the hour, the midnight hour. And I always like to color these so I can tell it's a formula. And then you can double click the fill handle here to just copy that formula throughout all the data. Each line is one sample for a single element. This is an HSS, and there are about 92 different instances of this element, a various aspect, whatever this means. And you can see on to the right of the colon here, 92 different elements in the 1 o'clock hour. So these are 92 instances of one element type, generating a bunch of KPIs for the midnight hour 0000 on July 10th of 2020. What does it represent? Who knows? I'm not an HSS guy, but the techniques still work, right? The techniques worked on the previous example. What was it? A long distance dashboard. Remember, I'm angling for a two-step process here. Bring in the latest data and refresh the pivot tables so that reports are all as automated as possible. And once you've incurred the one-time hit, more or less, of developing the dashboard, each time you want to update it, it's that simple two-step process, so it updates very rapidly, okay? That's what I'm trying to get everybody to. I'm not actually going to do any analysis. I'm not very good with HSSs. What I want to get to, though, is, remember, here was this dashboard. This was the dashboard I would produce for maybe a monthly staff meeting, or depending upon the content, some type of, maybe I share it with my peers. Maybe it's just in the paper brains on my own desk so that I can compare the latest month with previous months. Yeah, the actual analysis, I would have to do different data, and I didn't prepare that. Okay, sorry about that, John. Are you an HSS guy? Maybe I'd like, hey, why don't you do one of these and you do HSS analysis, because that's what it appears to me to be. All of these fields. I did a sample. Something I did last week was on the data distribution. This shows for each day and each hour of the day. So you can see in this example, I've got pretty much 10 complete days, 10 complete days, all 24 hours of samples. And you can see this is just the count. See over here, the count. I've got 210 samples for almost every hour of every day. Here looks like an error. Probably, since it's exactly twice as many, probably the data was pasted in twice or somehow duplicated. Home. God. Basically, it's the it's kind of the new thing of HLR. It's the 4G version of the HLR, and I have forgotten what the acronym stands for. Okay, so getting back to my data here, I have roughly 10 days, all 24 hours of each day, with a bunch of different instances, OSS timestamps, hourly timestamps for all those instances of each HSS element. Wow, that's a mouthful. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. I think I did another Geoday. This was, again, what we did last week. It's a little too large. This is what we did last week. Something else that you can do, and I'm going to get off topic here, but it's nice to have something like this, because in a snap, it's just you can see immediately what's the distribution of your data. You might want to also do this for the HSS elements. I didn't do that last week. That's left as an exercise for the student. But coming back here, here's my data. I just created the hour, so I'm going to create a new work. I don't even have to do that, do I? The simple way to do that is here. Let's say, before I make the pivot table, to create a pivot table, how does it get going here? To create the pivot table, you need to have the source data. And the easy way to do that, the way most people do that, is they just highlight all the data, right? Here's your select table or range for the data you want to analyze, or the data that the pivot table will summarize. So most people will just, at this point, click. I use shortcuts. So now I'm on B1 and I could just select all my data like that. And you can see I've selected B1 all the way to BM 52291, 52,000 plus rows of data. But what do I do tomorrow? I have to change the source. Sure, you could. Oh, but you know what? If you're doing websites, I don't want to digress, but you should check out Kafka. Kafka is an implementation of an Apache web server. That's a great way. You take your Apache logs and you send them into Kafka, and then any application that wants to analyze those logs just subscribes to that Kafka bus. And it's probably too much for now. Anyway, interesting topic. Kafka, K-A-F-K-A, just like the author. But back to this, you've got John, K-A-F-K-A, like the author. I told you it was like the author. Anyway, rather than manually type in the range I want to use for this pivot table, I would rather define a range that changes as I add data. Magic, you say? Not at all. So let's go back up here. I want to do what's called a dynamic named range. And this was back to my original, let's see here, SOP 16. I've done the synthetic field. That was the hour field that I put in the first column B of that worksheet, my source 2 worksheet. Now I'm going to show you dynamic named ranges. All named ranges are the offset function. Use the offset function. Offset is just a displacement from a starting point and a size, right? That turns out to be 5 separate arguments. So I'm going to call this my source 2 because I've already used source. This is going to be the dynamic named range, where it's going to be a range of Excel cells that changes its size automatically. Let me show you what I mean. So that's the offset function. And there's 5 arguments to the offset function. The first is a starting point. So the starting point is B1. Next is the rows offset from, if you actually type this into a cell, maybe I should do that. Yeah, let's do that so you can see that. Again, the offset function, we can now use to reference. So this is the upper left-hand corner, typically, the upper left-hand corner of the range that you're going to name, the range of cells that you want to use. So that's my B2. B1, excuse me. And then let's go back here. The rows, that's the height, the displacement or the offset from that starting point. For me, that's 0. And then it's I just want the 0, darn it. I don't know. Yeah, 0 rows offset. 0 columns offset, that's the third argument. The fourth argument is the height. So I want this to be a dynamic named range. The height in rows is from the very first row, row 1, all the way to the last row of data. Well, as we paste data in, we're always adding you paste this data into column C. That's your timestamp, right? So if there's a value in column C, that means you got data there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select column C, back up. Once I've got data in column C, I know that that row should be included. So to include, the simplest way to explain this is I want to count how many rows have data in column C. Column C, so I'm just going to select the whole bloody column because it's good practice to only do one thing on each worksheet. For this type of approach, put all your data on one sheet, put a pivot table on a different sheet, one pivot table per sheet. But try and keep it simple. When you come back and try and modify this later, that's a best practice that will make your life easier. Or if someone else has to take up this dashboard workbook at a later time, it'll be easier for them to figure out what you've done. So I have said the count A is the function of cells in column C that have a value. If it was all numeric data, I just use the count function. If there's non-numeric data, the count function returns 0 for that cell. But I want to include, because the first row, it's the header, but I want to count that. So now I do for the columns. Well, there's a lot of columns in this workbook. And because I add synthetic fields, I'm gonna increase the column count. So we're going to do the same thing. To count the number of columns, it's the count A function on row 1. Same thing. I need another parenthesis to close out the offset function. Now, offset always returns. It doesn't return a readable value. It's always an argument to another function. But I can just paste this. Hope I'm right. And come into my formula define name. And I'm going to create source 2. And there's my function, and I'm going to add it. And one cool thing, this is the name manager, this little dialog box here that says define name. I'm using a Mac. The Apple implementation of Microsoft Office is horribly broken. So if you're using a Windows platform, you get much better feedback from Excel. It's much better, but that's not I don't get to do that. So here in the name manager, if you click in this, select the range of cells, it will highlight the selected. Why is it not doing that? So I have an error in my workbooks and in my formula because yeah, it's all screwed up. I tried to paste it in and that didn't work. So I'm going to come back here and tweak. So you can see the formula, the source 2 to 205. That's all goofy, right? So let's do this again. It was count A on column C, right? I don't know why that's wrong. Thanks a lot, Excel. Count A on column C. It always helps to start in the upper left-hand corner. So let's try that again. Define name. Here's source 2. Got the whole thing. I want the starting point. God, it screwed this all up. Thanks, Excel. So I'm going to start with B1, and then it was 0 for the height displacement or offset, and then 0 for the column or width displacement offset, 0. And then I want to count A, column C. Like I said, the Apple implementation of Microsoft Office is broken. And then I'm going to do the same thing, count A on row 1, because that will give me the number of columns of data in my workbook, in my source range. And I need to close out the offset function and update that. There's a problem with this formula. These are hard to troubleshoot. It's just, oh, I can see right there. See, it's, I've been working with this broken implementation of Office on Apple for so long, I can kind of spot this, but sometimes it just deletes the offset function, which is lovely. But what I said was you can then click in this defined range, select the range of, if I click in there, Excel will put the flashing kind of dashes around the edge of the data. So you can see it here to the right of column BM, and down here at the bottom, after row 50611. So now I've got a range that automatically selects all the data. And let's show that. Let's go out to back to column C. 50611 was the last row of data, right? So how about we just kind of goof around? And for grins, I'm going to add another row of data. It's the exact same as the previous row, but now I should be able, it should show, remember it was row 50611 was the last row of data in my named range. So let's take a look. Now it should be 50612. Source 2, if I click in there, and there you go. 50612 is now the last row of data. Got to be careful about that. God damn it. Yeah, you can see the flashing dashes out there. So now I've got a dynamic name range. I use this to create charts, yeah. Gosh, I'm up at 130%. I can go to 150, yeah. How's that? No, I learned this creating reports. So really all I've done there, synthetic fields is simple. Synthetic fields is just adding a column, and I always add it to the left because sometimes the raw data that you add in or paste in or import, what if your raw data, maybe it increases by one column, you know, in the next interval, you added an element or you're looking at something new. So if you put your synthetic fields on the left, so if the raw data changes, it doesn't overwrite any of your formulas. Okay, that's why you do that approach. The dynamic named ranges, I discovered that because I wanted the range to adjust automatically. And the next step here is I'm going to show you get pivot data, which you've not seen. Nobody's seen that. So now I've got all this data defined. I want to insert a pivot table, and I'm going to put it on a new worksheet. Yeah. But the name of my data range is source 2. And I just click OK. There's kind of the template for the pivot. And you can see here my first column is hour, and all the other columns of data have been included. So again, what I did last time was drop the hour field onto the rows area. And I think last time I did the success rate of send routing. I don't remember why that. Yeah. So that's showing me the count, right? But so that's showing me the count. What I want is, if you look at the data, you can see in the header, it's a percentage. So let's make it a percentage. No, we can't do that. I can't make a percentage because it'll turn the 2100 into a count. Yeah, I can do a percentage here. I want the average. So this is, remember, this is a bunch of, there's like 92 elements doing this for each timestamp. So I want the hourly average. Yeah, there's the average. But I cannot make that a percentage because Excel, it's already been multiplied by 100. If I make it a percentage, it'll be 9,383 would be the first one, yeah. What I can do, though, is I can format it, be a little prettier, right? There you go. So there's my data. Now, the next step is the get pivot data, right? And get pivot table, I think you've probably never heard about because it's a little, you can't look it up. But if you just click, right? So there is, if you read this, for the number 1 hour, my average of success rate of send routing info is 94.52%, which is that, right? So let's do this. What you do in your chart or in your dashboard is you have your hours. And the cool thing about doing it, this is going to give us a time of day distribution because there's 24 hours in a day, right? And again, I told you I like to flag these as, so here's my hour. And this is basically send percentage. Let's keep it simple here, shall we? So what I want is I want this to read the hour. So it's not, let's not hard code the 1, let's hard code this field. So it's still, by looking at I5, it's getting the proper number, right? There's the 1 o'clock hour. That's the average for all of those elements. And so I just filled, and now effectively it's the same formula, right? So if I, I'm sorry. And I purple them, right? Because it's a formula. So now, what have I accomplished? Why is this cool? Well, it may not seem great to you at first, but because these never change, but it's the same approach. I'm going to repeat it, right? But now that you just saw what I did, let me back up to that. That was my data automation, and I created this pivot table. What did I call it? Was it on there? That was the data. Yeah, so let's rename that. TO day pivot. This is the 16th episode. Otherwise, I'll confuse it with other ones. I'm showing the hourly average for all values embedded in my data set, right? So let's tweak that a bit so that it's a little more clear. Let's add another, let's insert, because remember when I created my formula, my dynamic named range, I started with B1 right there. So if I insert a column, it'll be included in the data. If I insert it inside insert it to the right of the first column, that way my dynamic named range will stay accurate. So I'm working around to show you charts, John, I really am. So this is going to be day. And the day is a little more complicated. You need the date formula. Do you know that Excel stores dates as the number of days since January 1 of 1900, and the fractional part is the hours, minutes, seconds. So if I go to the last one, so that's the 2300 hour. If I deformat that, if you know this, say so, and I won't waste your time. I want to make it general. What that tells you is, can you read that? There's 44,031 days since January 1 of 1900. And this 95833, well, that's 23 hours. All right, so I'm going to undo that because it doesn't matter. Excel will handle it the same. The formatting is just for the human eye. It looks like a date. Doesn't matter. Yeah. What I want is the day. So, to get a day, what I'm basically doing is truncating off the fractional part, but it's because it's a date. The proper way to do that would be with the date function. My C, D, and then the month is D2, and then the day. Excuse me. Pardon me. Sorry about that. And then the last one is the day, and I need to close out parent. So all I have now is the integer value that Excel is storing, right? And you double click that little knot in the lower right-hand corner and Excel will fill down all the way. I have copied the formula below the last bit of data. So you get this garbage. I should not have done that. How far down did that go? Yeah. I'm just trying to clean this up. I don't want those there right now. We'll talk about that later. So now I've got the date function here. If I'm going to violate my best practice and put a second pivot table on this field, but I want to illustrate a point. If I refresh this first, because I just changed the dynamic name range, I need to refresh this pivot. And you see it just added the day field. So what if I drop that on here? Let's, since I got 10 days, let's add some more columns here. Now, let's make the day out here. And now you can see I have the hourly average success rate of send routing info by day. Oh, yeah. There we go. I have the hourly average. So now imagine every day I import the next day's data. So that's what this column here, this approach does. Let me show you by changing the approach to be day specific. So what's the maximum value of days in our workbook? Well, that's column C, or now it's column D because I just added another column. If you look here, column D, the maximum date of data available is just column D. So let's do max date is, what is it? It's max of column C. Column C in source 2. If I just click column C. And again, there's that integer value. If I double click that, it'll be more, but I'm going to make that a date. Is that the, yeah, it's not an integer value. It includes the part. Well, typically we're going to do this by day, not by the fractional part. So I don't want to use column C. We just defined the days as column C. God damn it. I got this all confused. I'm confusing you. Sorry. Instead of using the actual timestamp column, column C, the day column, is the integer values. And that gets us exact days without fractional part. So let's try that again. We're just going to make it C instead of D. So now it's just the integer value. If I format that like a date, let's do, I like this format. You can see if and remember, we've truncated by using the date function, by using that column C, we've truncated the fractional values. So this is just the day. So if that's the latest day, what's the previous day? Well, it's going to be one day less, right? Well, the automated way to do that is with the rows function. Do you know the rows function? Rows simply returns a count of the number of rows in its argument. The argument is a range of, where are we at here? G. So let's say G56, rows G56, G56. And I want to anchor that, you know, anchors, and then G56 again. So rows returns the count of rows in its argument. The argument is a range that is one row, it returns 1. If I fill it down, now it's 2 rows. Do you know about anchors? So the first part, to the left of the colon, that's an anchored cell because it has those dollar signs. To the right of the colon, it's not anchored. So if I use fill, that second part will grow. So now you can see simply by dragging the rows argument, I have 10 days. I have 10, count of 1 to 10. Well, there was my max. So let's use that date function again. Oops. How we doing, John? Am I losing you? This is a bit much to take in all at once. There's like a total of only 5 or 6 formulas, but each one builds upon the previous. So that's make it a named range, max date. So now it is equals date, year, day max date, wrong way. But that's not quite right, is it? Because that's the same date we started with. But what I want to do is I want the day before. So I'm just going to subtract away that one. So that's what I wanted, July 18th. And now if I fill down, each cell is going to subtract away an increasing number. So there is the previous 10 days of data. But actually, since I'm going to use this like up here, the first one needs to be today. So that needs to be 0. So let's subtract 1 off of my formula. Subtract 1 off of my formula. And now you see it's correct. So let's fill down. So this is the current day and the previous 9 days. And it's automatic. As I add data to my source, right? If I paste in more days of data to my source, this list of dates automatically increments, right? And remember what I had up here was the hourly average. Well, now let's do another pivot table. I better make a little space for a pivot table. So there's my dates, right? Automated dates. Every time I add data to my source, this will change. This is what I want. Let's highlight that, because that's what I want. So let's insert a pivot table. And remember, same data set, source 2. And now daily. I want daily averages. I'm just looking at the daily average. So here's the day. And let's do what was that? Send success rate of send. And it's a average, and we want that to be a number. Oh, we'll keep that. So here's my daily average, right? Right? So now, here's my, what is it, send rate. Now I've got my daily average. Click an equal sign, click in the pivot table, And now what I got, there's my date. So instead of hard coding that date in there, here it is. And let's format that. Here we go. Here is the average success send rate for each day for the most recent 10 days. Completely automated. Now, what the automated part of this is, if I wake up tomorrow morning and paste in the day for, well, in this example, the 20th of July, this will all shift. That will become the 20th of July, and that will be the value for the 20th of July, and all the other values will shift down one. The 10th of July will disappear. Magic, you say? Let me show you. Extra data right there. So here's my 20th of July. I have that data. So I am just going to copy that. I cheat. I use all the keyboard shortcuts. So I've selected all the 20th of July data, and I'm going to paste special values. There's my 20th of July data. I need to fill down my formula. Right? Done. So now if I come back to my pivot, it's already got the date because the date is tied to the max function. As soon as I added the 20th, the date changed. So this column changed, right? But I haven't refreshed my pivot table. So I get the reference error when a pivot table returns no data. But if I refresh this pivot table, I'll get my value for the 20th right there. And the 10th has gone away. So that's what I mean by automation, is every morning I come in and I'm going to update my source data. You know, I got the most recent export from the OSS. I pasted it into this worksheet. I refreshed my pivot table, and my data updated automatically. So now, chart, you say? I don't know. What do you want? I column, line chart? Let's do a line chart. So there's my line chart. Yeah, it doesn't look very intelligent. I just want to illustrate the point, though. And I need to select the data. The horizontal axis, that's the dates. So my dates are here. July 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. And so picture the linkage in your mind. Here's the latest date, the 20th, and here's the 10 days ago. So this is like a moving average. If you wanted, I mean, with Excel and the offset function, you can create a rolling average, like show me the average of the last 7 days or 14 days or 15 days, right? So, but this is all linked together. I paste the new data, you know, today's or yesterday's OSS, start over. I come into the office this morning, I export yesterday's data from my OSS, I paste it here, I come to my pivot table, I refresh it, this data updates, and because this chart is linked to that data, updates automatically. So all I did was paste in my new data, refresh my pivot tables, and my chart updates automatically. And that's what happened here. Is this big enough to see? Same thing. All this data is linked. Now, this is formatted, and I, had a lot of time to work on this. I worked on this for 9 years. It was a small company, and I was responsible for long distance charges. I owned that vendor and that service. So I worked on this for a lot of years. It's completely automated, though. I come back here, I paste in, or in this case, it was manually typed in data, but then I refresh the pivot tables, and my dashboard instantly updates. So you can see there's a lot of good information here that if I tried to update this manually every time, it would take a long time. I've goofed this up, and I'm sorry about that. But normally I would just automatically display the date. I'd display the date in each of these as well, in case someone say, hey, can you send me that cost per MOU chart? I could just copy it and paste it into email. The date would already be embedded. Yeah, okay. It's the technique I want you to pick up on. So if we come back to this one and to that one. So I said I wanted to show you 4 skills. We've just done it. Synthetic fields was the hour and date columns. I created those. I synthesized that data by evaluating or a formula to look at the data. Another way you might do that would be like, since you're in the RAN, you might have a lookup on a table of base station IDs, and maybe there's relevant base station information, address or azimuth or tilt or zenith, whatever direction, right? That could all be in a lookup table per base station, something like that. So that would be another synthetic field. I've got an example of that I use. I don't know if I could find it very quickly, but that's my base station tracker. Since you're a RAN guy, I'll show you that. My BTS project tracker. Where is that? My BTS project tracker. And I think this is the most recent one, March 30th. Okay, I don't work with it very often. So this is a project workbook for when you you have to make a change in all your base stations, like a firmware update, or there's a hardware change, or maybe you're doing you're adding a carrier to a bunch of sites, or something like that, right? This is you have a checklist of things that must be done in each and every site, right? Sorry, I got to get chat back visible here. There we go. And this is my dashboard for the RAN project tracker, and it works exactly the same. Actually, it's even more clever, but you can see here's the dashboard, all linked, as we've just been discussing. Yeah, but I see you're a tower and site acquisition training guy, but so if I talk base stations to you, you probably know what I'm talking about. Or if I just talk sites, it'll make sense, right? So each of these, again, you can't see the details, especially because it's only at 90%. I can zoom a bit. So this is just kind of a way to assess how the project is going. Rather than being a daily tracker, it's a weekly, right? But it's, again, let me slow down here. It's weekly. So, ideally this is showing a week at a time, but dashboard is second skill. What's second skill? Sorry, didn't catch that. You got a microphone, John? I can enable you to speak so we could do this a little more real-time-ish if you got a microphone. But same thing it's just data, and no, dashboard, the whole thing was to produce dashboard. Sorry. Here was the 4. Synthetic fields, dynamic named ranges, date automation, and get pivot data. So synthetic fields is we add those columns. Dynamic named ranges is you encapsulate all the data in a way that automatically expands, right? Date automation is these fields that I showed you, so that you always have a list of the most recent, whether it's days, weeks, months. It depends on what's the periodicity of your report, right? I've shown you hourly. Up here's hourly, down here's daily. Same technique applies. It's a little more complicated with this one because it's a week at a time. Handling weeks is a little more. Where's my weeks? Yeah, here's the year week. You can see it's a little messier function, but it's the same technique, right? It's all linked together so that you update the data, refresh your pivot tables, and your dashboard updates automatically. I don't have anybody watching my back, so I'm not sure. If you have a mic, let's see. How can I do that? Get your mic set up. Oh, this is a live. You didn't have to register. Sorry, John. I can't do that. The 4th technique is where you... Oh, that's the neighbor is shoveling snow. How much snow did you get, John? We only got, I'm in DTC. We got less than 2 inches. It's hardly worth it, but the neighbor's out shoveling snow, and I can hear that through my headset. The fourth technique was get pivot data. No, here, where I would can you see that now? You can't really. I want to show the formula. I'm just going to remove the equal sign so that you can see that. So there's the get pivot data formula. Does that help? Can you see that a little bit better? So most of this is just when you, if I remember how we did this, we click an equal sign and then click inside of a pivot table. I know you can't see that yet, but there's what you get just upon, clicking. And it has this hard-coded date value in it. And we change that date value into a link to one of these trailing. What is it you want put in a chart? I mean, here's a chart. This demonstrates the chart. If you look at the, where's my chart? Select data. Here's the value in the chart. There's the title. Effectively, that's this value here in a chart. I mean, I could do it like this. Oh, you rat. That didn't help much, does it? Better? And it really doesn't matter what this shows because every pivot table will return something slightly different. But the format of the arguments, chat. Chat, Russell, chat. There you go. If you've got an Excel workbook, make a pivot table and just click an equal sign, and then, enter an equal sign, and then before you do anything else, click inside one of your pivot tables, and that's how you get started. Chat, Russell, chat. I kept saying, sorry, John, I kept seeing chart. So that's kind of the deal. That's how this works. John, we're connected, if you want. We have company. Who joined us? We're connected on LinkedIn. If you have questions, ping me. If you want, you can email me a workbook that you're working on. Be happy to help you with it. But again, the technique of automation is 2 steps. What we're doing is trying to make it so you have a dashboard that is updatable by 1, bringing in the latest data, and 2, refreshing the pivot tables. So that's it. That's really it. Somebody new has joined us. You want to say hi? You can see up here in the header that there's only 2 of you today. I think it's the cold weather here in Denver, although that's no way to know where everybody else is. So I'm going to stop sharing, and you get to see me again. So, any questions? Nishan, how you doing? You're a little late today. I will. I can't see any reason why I wouldn't share this. So after I end this session, I will download the video and clean it up a little bit, and then I'll post it to the YouTube channel. And if you guys, Nishant, I think you're already part of this, but John, if this was helpful for you, like I said, you can reach out to me directly. I'm going to, so yeah, here's our YouTube channel. That's where a whole bunch of this type of videos are posted. And I go live pretty much every Sunday at this time. So John, if you want to join again, we already have this link. Where is that? I've got them all written down here, but I've got so many that I can't figure it out. It's go live. Here we go. You can just click this link, and you'll have to give me your email address, but every week when I go live, I always send out an announcement to other people that are interested in this. Usually on Saturdays, I'll send out an email that says, hey, on Sunday, we're going to go live touching on these subjects. So if you want to get that, John, just click that link and you can sign up for it. Nishant, I think you already are. Yeah, sure thing. Nishant, how about follow me on LinkedIn? Follow me on LinkedIn, and then if you have questions or you want to share, if you'd like, share with me a workbook, and we can go through it together with your data, so that it'll make more sense to you. And when we're done, you'll have a working dashboard or workbook or whatever it is that you're working on. Happy to help, guys. Okay, that's it. Watch for the YouTube. Well, Nishant, you'll get the email. John, watch for the YouTube video on our channel. And hey, join us next week. Thanks so much. Cheers.